Juan Martinez is no stranger to the challenges of connecting people, especially youth, to nature in urban areas. A proud native of South Central Los Angeles, Juan Martinez's passion to empower individuals and youth led him to direct the Sierra Club's first Environmental Justice Youth Leadership Academy in Los Angeles. Mr. Martinez is the spokesperson for the Sierra Club's Building Bridges to the Outdoors initiative, which works to connect all youth with nature. In 2011, Juan was named a National Geographic Emerging Explorer, a program which recognizes and supports uniquely gifted youth, young adventurers who are making a difference early in their careers. Also, in 2011, he was named a member of the Sierra Club Foundation Board, the youngest member in the history of that organization. That's pretty good. Juan Martinez's personal and professional journey is a powerfully inspiring reminder of how experiences in nature can be transformative influence, especially for our nation's youth. Let us now welcome Juan Martinez, Director of Leadership Development and Natural Leaders Network for the Children and Nature Network.
So thank you. Let me, as we get set up, first off, I want to apologize for my scruffiness. It's, I haven't shaved, and that's in Movember status. If Movember is a no shave month to encourage awareness of cancer research in general, specifically for male cancer. So I'm usually a lot more clean shaven than this. There are many people to thank. I especially want to thank Emilian, who's sitting here in the front. He's been a great host and representative of the whole staff at Chicago Wilderness. He, first thing we did after getting off the airport was go get a hot dog, Chicago style. And then we had dinner, deep dish pizza. So I think I'm getting a very thorough introduction to Chicago. And I'm excited to be in Chicago because I've heard so much about the work that each one of you here represents today. Everything from fishing buddies to the work, the groundbreaking work at the Chicago Zoological Society, creating pathways for young leaders to have careers and development and bring it back to their communities. Faith in Place, they are some amazing and unique ways of creating green jobs to lift people out of poverty while also building their own communities. Those are only some of the organizations that I've heard of at the national level. So I want you to know that at the national scale, your work and your grinding away is echoing and is setting the trend for a lot of other places. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we're gonna do today. I always like to know the agenda before it happens. I'll talk a little bit about my background, the work that I'm doing at the national scale now, how I got to be here, and give you guys a couple of challenges or suggestions, and then we'll end it there, and then we'll get started. This might look like a faraway place in a faraway land, a war zone, but that's April 29th, 1994. And those are the LA riots. In the middle of those fires and smoke is my apartment building. And I was 6 years old, and I remember looking out of the window and seeing tanks driving down my street. I remember my parents putting me inside a bathtub, me and my sisters inside a bathtub, because they didn't want us to be in the cross path of a bullet. And I remember being 6 years old and thinking to myself that this was going to be it. This was it. Life made no sense. And for somebody who was just learning to make sense out of life, to be thrown out of control in that way, made me an angry kid. Made me an angry kid because I was poor. Made me an angry kid because I saw violence. It made me an angry kid because I saw my parents struggle every day in their life to pay rent, to put food on the table, and to provide us with a better life. So it made me angry. And what I decided I was going to do, I was going to play the cards that I was dealt, and I was going to rig the game. Because the people that I saw making sense out of it, making the best out of it, were the gang members. And I didn't idolize gang members because they drove the nice cars or were able to pay the bills, or drove the nice cars or had the nice looking girl on their side. But at the end of the day, what they were able to do is protect their family, pay the bills, and provide a home. And that was the immediate pathway for me. So from 6 on, I decided that that was going to be my pathway. And I knew that my parents loved me enough to keep pushing me away from that, but what society was telling me otherwise was different. I went to Dorsey High School. And Dorsey High School is rival to the Crenshaw High School. Crenshaw, you've probably heard of. But Dorsey and Crenshaw go beyond just being high school rivals. They are also the birthplace of the Bloods and the Crips, two of the largest gangs to ever come about in U.S. history. And when you're a young Latino growing up in an African-American community that is the hotbed for the African-American gangs, you begin to know what life really means. To stare down the barrel of a gun one too many times lets you know just how much every day you step out of that door means. So even going to school was a gamble. But it wasn't always bad. If you haven't put 2 and 2 together, I'm an avid Dodger fan. But I'm a Dodger fan because Dodger Stadium, Chavez Ravine, also sits within the second oldest city park of LA, Legion Park. And there's this point called Angels Point where you can see on a clear day, very rare clear days in LA, you can see all the way out to the beach. And I remember my parents taking us there when they could afford it and when they could take the time off of work and taking us there. And the one thing my dad told me that really made this place sink into me was, this is yours. This is our park. This is my park, I'm giving it to you. And this is our family park. When he said that, it allowed me to really take ownership of that park. To know that my family owned this place. And to feel responsible for whatever happened in this park. So with the smell of a carne asada in the background, we bonded and created memories for the couple of hours that we could spend in that park. And there's nothing like having carne asada, going on a hike, and having Vince Scully in the background announcing the game. Around the age of 15, I was pretty well settled into a lifestyle that made me skip class. I was making money, I was hustling, doing whatever I could in whatever fashion I could to get money home. And I ended up in detention. And in detention, they gave me an ultimatum. They said either you stay in detention, where who knows what's going to happen to you, or you take us up on this new and unique opportunity at the high school. And it was called Eco Club. Now, given that I'm at the age of 15 and in a very different state of mind, I considered this. Because I said I can either stay in detention and keep on down the path that I know I want to go down, or I can go take this different opportunity in Eco Club. And my rationale to pick Eco Club was that's where all the dorks, the geeks, and the nerds hang out. So I'm gonna run that place. And the first thing Ms. Glenda Pepin does when I show up, she doesn't ask me any questions. She doesn't ask me my name. She just gives me a box of seeds and says, pick a bag, we're going out to the garden. And in that garden, I picked jalapenos. And this is the garden at Darcy High School. And I picked jalapenos because I wanted to show my mom that I could do it too. Because my mom grew jalapenos out of coffee pots, out of old tires, out of the window sills, out of any crook or cranny that she could find in our apartment building. And she grew these amazing plants, aloe vera, nopales, chamomile tea, all these different things that didn't make sense to me at that time because I thought this was just something that moms did. But I picked jalapenos because I wanted to make salsa at the end of that semester when I grew those jalapenos, and I wanted to make salsa for my mom. And these jalapenos kind of turned into a thing for me. I kept going day after day trying to figure out how to grow the best jalapenos anybody else had ever grown. And what I realized then is that they tricked me. Because then I started to read about photosynthesis, about the pH balance, about different soil types and hydration methods and all these different things that never would have made sense to me. But somehow, because I wanted to grow these jalapenos, now I was worried about it. And so I kept going day after day in semester and ended up getting a B in science class. And at the end of the semester, Ms. Glenda Pepin comes back to me and tells me, there's this opportunity to apply for a scholarship, and I want you to do it. And it's going to be in a faraway place, and the state she named, I'd never heard of. But I went back to my parents and I told them about this opportunity. And to them, it didn't make sense because it was, you're going camping and going to the middle of the woods. How does this help you with your school again? And had to get them on the phone with my teacher and explain that outdoor environmental education was a facilitator to science and math scores and all that good stuff. But finally they did. And so I get on a plane, I get on a bus, and I get off that bus, and for the first time in my life, what I realized is that I've never smelled fresh air. And it pierces your lungs when you smell fresh air for the first time. Second thing I realized, I looked up and I saw stars for the first time. I saw more stars than I could count for the first time at the age of 15. And I saw a shooting star. And that's when I realized it wasn't a special effect made up by Disney. And then the next morning I wake up and I'm staring at these. Grand Teton National Park. Mountains that rise up from the valley, unlike any other mountains in the world. And something happened. Something snapped. Because there was this barrier that just flooded my world. And I began to realize that my life mattered. My life made sense. That within the scope of this universe, my tiny speck of a life meant something. And I realized that I had enough of my heart here in South Central LA, and enough of my soul here in the Grand Tetons to build a bridge, to make sense of it all. And I went back to South Central with this value embedded in my heart that now I knew, not I had seen and tasted what heaven could feel like. And we also learned about tectonic plates and soil erosion and wildlife and scat and all that good stuff. And I went on to be the first graduate of my family out of high school. Both of my parents only had middle school education. First in my family to go on to university, first in my family to have a job that didn't involve labor. And in 2005, I met a man. His name is Richard Louv. And he wrote a book called Last Child in the Woods. How many of you have heard of that book here in that room? Good. And he'll be the first person to say that he's not the first person to talk about nature deficit disorder. I mean, he's the first person to coin that phrase. And in 2005, he invited me to come out. I'd heard about his book. Admittedly, so I hadn't read it before I met him. So to me, Richard Louv was just another cool guy that was doing cool work. But what he outlined what he outlines in his book is the fact that there's a generational gap today. Those of you over the age of 40, raise your hands. Thank you for doing that. But I also want to say thank you because it's your generation that set the stage up for us, for my generation. I stand on this stage now because you believe that I have something worth saying. I stand on this stage because you marched hand in hand for the civil rights movement. I stand on this stage because you gave Vietnam soldiers and those over the age of 18 the right to vote. I stand on this stage on your shoulders. So I want to say thank you to that generation. And those of us under the age of 40, raise your hand. Thank you. We're a generation driven by hope, passion, and the tenacity to think larger and bigger. The millennial generation, those born between 1978 and 1990, I forget the exact date, but in the 90s, are the millennial generation. And the millennial generation is defined as the most diverse generation to ever come about in US history. The most educated generation, the most open to change generation. We are the generation that put a president of color in the White House. That's our generation. Because if you went out to any polling place, any campaign office, any given day of the campaign, we are that you saw somebody under the age of 40 working there. We are the generation that's bringing together different generations. And being that bridge of a generational gap. But we are also the generation that's been given a stern warning by the US Surgeon General that if we do not curb our habits, we will successfully be the first generation to decrease human life expectancy. We are the first generation that has to take vitamins that are provided by the sun. We are the first generation that spends well over 40 hours. The average US teenager now spends over 40 hours connected to some form of technological device. That's a full-time job. So we know there's a challenge. But if there's something about challenges in the millennial generation, is that we know we can do it. So in 2005, Richard Louv and I sit down together and he starts to talk about his book tour and how in every book tour he goes around, he's hearing the young leaders express their voice, but there wasn't a platform to do so at the national scale. And to express their voice, not out of concern, not out of the fear factor that if we don't do something about this, that this will hurt us. But a place where we can celebrate our connection to the outdoors in our everyday life. A place that gave you hope and the chance to dream for a better tomorrow. Because Dr. King did not say, I have a nightmare. He said, I have a dream, and this is what it looks like. And in this room, you have the innovators, the first people to take that message out, because you do it in your everyday life, whether you know it or not. So our challenge is to take that message and pass it on to the 20% that's going to adopt that message in any given community. And that's going to be the adoption of an idea. When you're able to hit 20% of the population with an idea, they adopt it. So the Natural Leaders Network was formed in that method. A peer-to-peer network that supported and celebrated our connection to the natural world. And I come from a community organizing background. And I was very settled and in a comfort zone before I took this job. And I thought I was gonna live a long and non-stressful life, working, well, not so much stressful, less stressful, but I was working political campaigns in the state of California, and I thought I was gonna end up in Sacramento. And that was a pathway that I decided for myself. Along between 15 and 24, before I took this job, I volunteered on my free days to take inner city kids that are in foster home, detention centers, first-time offenders. I would take them out backpacking into the high Sierras with different programs across the country. One of those programs I actually volunteered and came out to Chicago a long time ago to go to the Indiana Sand Dunes. So I didn't get the Chicago experience because I just landed and went straight out to the Indiana Sand Dunes. And that is one amazing resource and place that you guys have nearby. Before that, I was doing very much what the serving staff here is doing for you today. So please let them know that you appreciate it, because I was in their footsteps. I was in their shoes. And 2005, out of all the places to meet, for 15 individuals to gather around this idea of the Natural Leaders Network. Omaha, Nebraska, which just also happens to be home of the Arbor Day Foundation. I didn't know that. But 15 young individuals who had nothing, a common thread, which was our connection to the outdoors and our value to share that with our communities, got together and started to develop this idea of the Natural Leaders Network. And the Natural Leaders Network's mission is to empower a worldwide youth network to celebrate children and nature. And we sit on 3 pillars. The first one being communication. Communication, I talk about the 40 hours a week that the average US teenager is connected to a technological device. If you see that as a challenge, then your organization or your values will become, you're not being fair to not share your values and your dreams and your hopes with the world. Social media is not a challenge. Technology is not a challenger. It is a facilitator to our message. And I want you all to take 2 seconds right now and look at your smartphone, because that is probably one of your most powerful tools that you have ready at any given moment. If your organization, your message is not being shared on social media, you are deriving and being selfish. Because the world needs to know your message. The world needs to hear what you have to say. Social media is based upon validation of ideas. That's what we strive for. That's what social media is based, the base under it. You want people to know what kind of pizza and how amazing it was. And you want people to validate that that was a good pizza. You want to encourage people to go to that pizza place. You want to get your friends and family to go to that pizza place and experience and share that experience with you. Communication also deals with intergenerational communication. We know that there is generations that communicate differently. I don't know how the next generation will communicate. And I work towards communicating with my elders. But that intergenerational communication, that even flow of communication going back and forth, that's what you want to strive for. And that's what we strive for with the Natural Leaders Network. And we do it in different ways. We do it by social media. We do it by developing toolkits to be put out. We do it by developing marketing brands. My roots, my spot, my nature is outdoors. Diversity in nature. This is Kenneth Hahn State Park in LA. And those are the natural leaders in LA. Diversity in nature goes beyond ethnic and racial diversity. You have to think about socioeconomic diversity. You have to think about diversity in thought, diversity in background, diversity in education, diversity. The more diverse that you're able to build a program, the more successful and the more innovative ideas that you will come to the table with. That's what I found. Our last pillar, our third pillar, but definitely not the least, is green play to green pay. That for those young leaders who decide that this is a career path for them, that this is an opportunity to build a life for them, that we need to identify those career paths and help them craft their skills to do so. This is Washington, D.C. at the Good Jobs, Green Jobs Conference, which is the largest conference put on by the labor unions and traditional big environmental organizations. And what we came to them with was this idea that there's a void happening within green jobs that focus in the outdoors. Department of Interior has, admittedly so, said that they are about to face one of the largest job employment voids, vacuums in their history, because the baby boomers are going to retire soon. And when that happens, there's going to be a gap of those jobs for people to step into. One of the first things that we did, building off of our mission and our pillars, was to build this initiative called Let's Go Get Outside. And I'll tell you a little bit about the evolution of this initiative. It started off with us thinking, those 13 individuals in that room thinking, who else is out there? Who else is doing this amazing work that's our age and getting the message out about connecting people to the outdoors? So we called it the Natural Leaders Day the first year. And we put it out in the beginning of April, which is the Children in Nature Awareness Month. And we picked one Saturday and we said, all right, let's find out who's out there, just take a stab in the dark. And we got back 13 events in 6 different states. And we thought, yes, that's awesome. 13 more individuals that we can connect with. The next year, we built it into the Children in Nature Network overall strategic plan. And by that time, it was renamed to Let's Go Get Outside. And we expanded it to be a month long. And our goal was 50 events. And we got 62 events in 7 different states. 2012, Let's Go Get Outside initiatives. 562 events in all 50 states, 300,000 people getting outside in the month of April. But I want to stress that that's an evolution. That was an idea born out of a very small room, and you will go into your plenaries today in the very same fashion that those 12 individuals went into that fashion that founded the Natural Leaders Network. So whatever ideas are born out of this conference, someday they might reach that capacity. The comfort zone. I talk a lot about my comfort zone because it's a nice place. It's where I like to be. It's where I know everything around me. But stepping out of the comfort zone is really where the challenge, the growth, and the opportunity lie. And what I've began to develop at the personal level is to step out of that comfort zone as much as I can. And translating that to an organizational standard, stepping out of your comfort zone, going for the communities where you know your message might not resonate the best, going to those communities where you might have already been and were outed, or going to different and new innovative ways of thinking. Because when we step out of our comfort zone as organizations, we're able to look inside, back towards us. And when that happens, you begin to see different forms of thinking and building your organization up. Since 2009, the Children in Nature Network in our entirety we just completed our independent survey. Since 2009, we've gotten 8 million children out to play in the great outdoors. And that's because we step out of our comfort zone. Rich and I talk a lot. Rich likes to talk, if you ever get to meet him. He's a talker, and I like to listen, and sometimes I'll talk too. We talk about this new movement, and for lack of a definition at this moment, we call it the New Nature Movement. And we talk about this New Nature Movement because this is the movement on the rise, on the tide. This is a movement that's not necessarily going to be defined by us, but we are responsible for training those leaders who will define this movement. And there's 7 reasons for this New Nature Movement, and I'm not going to read them all, but I do want to hit on a couple of them. Conservation is not enough. We need to create nature. Last year, we hit the over 50% mark, the tipping point of our global population living near an urban city center. The entire world now lives near an urban city center. Over 50% of us do. That means that these cities are going to develop, going to look at their infrastructure, and going to build new ways to create nature and that connection to nature near the city. And whenever we can, whenever we're able to, we will make that progression back and forth to the national parks, to the green and open spaces, to the wildlands, to the prairies. In the meantime, in our everyday life, we need to have that connection. The more high-tech we become, the more nature we need. There's a reason why social media and progressive groups and nonprofit groups are facing a dilemma right now. How do you go from pressing like and signing an online petition to action in a community? That's the question that everybody's asking themselves around. I had the opportunity to sit down with Facebook's celebrity manager, and yeah, they have a celebrity manager. So every time a celebrity gets a Facebook page, they go through him, and if you hit a certain amount of fans or something like that, you are technically a fan page and a celebrity page. And what he said was a couple of things. One, which surprised me, was that over 60% of Facebook users are non-US. That means every time you put a message out, it's not only a message that captivates your US audience or your regional audience, it also captivates and engages other people in the world. The celebrity with the most fans is Vin Diesel. And he also said the other thing, the progression of social media now and technology in general will be in your pocket, in your hand. Everything is going mobile. Everything will be at the hand of a touch, and that's what they're all moving towards too. Everything is smaller, everything is faster, everything is more accessible. That's the name of the game. So if you're thinking about that, yeah. Let's go get outside. What you can do, and I've talked about social media and the comfort zone, but I think the most important part of this, and I'm doing it right now, is sharing a story. Because when you share a story, when you share your story, you invite people to become part of what you represent, your values. Long gone are the days when people would just show up to volunteer for the sake of feeling good. People want to be connected to people. People want to step away from the computer and build a relationship with you. So practice your story. Tell it. Because when you do, those people will build their story off of you. And they will share the values and what you represent. Not every single one of you here has a story. And not all of us are good at sharing story. But if you do, I promise you that people will feel the emotion, and if you speak from the heart, they will follow you. Some of the resources that we provide at the Children of Nature Network, especially as you look at your regional focus, are community action guides. And what we really pride ourselves in is the research studies and results. We are the prominent location and organization that provides research, academic research reviewed by peers from all over the world. And what we began to learn over the years is that nature deficit disorder is not just affecting us here in the United States, it's also affecting people all over the world. Nature Closer Families Toolkit and the Natural Leaders Toolkit are both available in Spanish as well as English. The Natural Leaders Network, which I oversee, has developed a new training called the Legacy Camp, where our mission is to carry forward the legacy by merging two different parts that you wouldn't traditionally think of. Community leadership skills merge with outdoor leadership skills. Because the question is, when you take somebody out to their first outdoor experience, how do they take that back into the community? And what are the skills that they need to do that? Every person you touch through your programs is an advocate for your program. And that's the way you should start to think about it. In 2009, I got the opportunity to introduce this guy, Department of Interior's Secretary Ken Salazar. And in 2000, sitting backstage, he comes in with his whole detail of like 4 bodyguards. It was right after the election. He comes straight to me, and we start speaking in Spanish. And I was surprised because he had like common people Spanish. It wasn't the Spanish that, you know, people stumble over or they learned from Rosetta Stone. It was real Spanish. And we started talking about his ranch in Colorado and the work that he's doing and what the young leaders have to hold on to him. And I had the honor to introduce him. And around that time, 2009, was an exciting part because I also got an invitation to be there at our 41st president's inauguration. 44th, sorry. And in the summer of 2009, I also got invited to another conference to speak at Salt Lake City. And it was the Outdoor Retailer Show, and the North Face invited me to come out and speak on their behalf about the programs that they were supporting us to put forward. And I'm standing afterwards at this free screening. First they said free screening, and then they followed that by free food. So then I knew I had to be there. And I'm looking at this picture, this photograph that they're auctioning off for a benefit, and it's a picture of the Grand Tetons National Park. And I'm standing there just staring at this picture intensely and eating away at the nice little bite-sized food that they had. And from behind me comes this guy that 6'2", very skinny, and we start talking away about the Grand Tetons and how I'd been there. And I tell him my story similar to the way I told it to you. And he looks over and tells me, have you ever thought about climbing the Grand Teton? I was like, yeah, in my dreams. He said, well, I'm going in a couple of weeks. Do you want to go with me? I said, well, I don't know. I'll think about it. I was like, what do you have to think about? It's like, well, I don't have the money. I the gear. He says, don't worry about that. And we walk over to Steve, who was president of the North Face at the time, and this guy starts to talk to Steve and tells him that, hey, me and I want to go climb the Grand. Would you outfit him and give him a ticket? He's like, yeah, sure, why not? And I'm trying to figure out who this guy is that can walk up to the president of the North Face to ask him for a ticket and free gear. And the screening of the movie was called The Wildest Dream. And dreams seem to be a theme in my life. And they start to introduce the movie about one of the most famous climbers of our time that went up to Everest, and on one of his specific climbs, he went out looking for George Mallory's body, who up to that time was thought to either have successfully been the first to climb Everest. But nobody knew because he died on the mountain and nobody could find his body to get clues whether he had climbed. And they start talking about this guy, and I'm like, oh, he sounds like a cool guy. And then they ask him to stand up. It's Conrad Anker. And he's the guy standing next to me. And then Steve turns over to me and tells me, you are, yeah, that's the guy you're climbing with. And on September 9th, 2009, I summited the Grand Teton with Conrad Anker. To be that kid who was looking down at the valley almost 10 years to the day, and then to sit on top of the Grand Teton was and that's on the way down, an 80-foot drop, rappelling. Have a little audio-visual treat.
So I grew up in South Central in the shadow of the LA riots. I didn't think about the future much. By the age of 15, I stared down the barrel of a gun 2 times. In order to get out of detention, I had to join Eco Club. And that turned out to be the best decision of my life. I came home a different person. And now, I'm a bridge between nature and the streets. I'm just trying to teach kids that it's cool to play in the dirt. I'm Juan Martinez, and I love nature like I love my hood, and I'm a National Geographic explorer.
I like to show that video because one, it's pretty cool. But I never thought I could look that cool. But it has also recently, last month, won an Emmy. I'm a National Geographic explorer. I have the honor and am humbled by the opportunity to speak to you all on a stage today. Youngest member to sit on the Sierra Club Foundation board. I'm a Murie Center Explorer in Residence, an Emmy winner. I say these things not to show off, not to read off my resume to you, but especially to the young people here today. Those of you that are in the shoe steps where I was 10 years ago, 13 years ago. I never set out to do these things. I never set out to win an Emmy. I never set out to be on the foundation board. I never set out to speak on a podium. What I set out to do was to empower individuals to create change in their communities for the better. That's what I do day to day, and that's what I base my life out of. And if I can do it, if I had no idea where I stand today before you, Never, ever, ever doubt where you can stand soon. And if you ever have any doubt, if you ever have, and the shadows will come, trust me, they will come. You can call me. You can send me an email. Because my success is your success. Your success is our success. At the end of the day, why I do it is my family. That's them right there. And this is a shot taken by National Geographic in a backyard in South Central LA. What I've learned throughout the years is that family goes beyond my immediate family. That if you share the vision, that if you share your passion, that if you share the story that I told today, you are part of my family. If you're in this room today, you are part of that family, that larger tribe. One of my favorite quotes is by Cesar Chavez. And I think it's appropriate that it's in Chicago, where the National Department of Interior and the National Park System want to create the Latino Heritage Museum and are moving to build surveys and get community input around that. But my favorite quote goes like this. Once social change begins, it cannot be reversed. You cannot uneducate the person who has learned to read. You cannot humiliate the person who feels pride. You cannot oppress the people who are not afraid anymore. We have seen the future, and the future is ours. Thank you again for being here today.